So, okay, so I guess we should make a start. So hi, everyone, and welcome back. Thanks for bearing with us over the last whole day on this kind of VR in Dimensions XR conference. So our next speaker requires no introduction, of course. Dr. Brennan Spiegel is a professor of gastroenterology at Cedars-Sinai. More importantly, he's been really the doyen of VR medicine, has a conference which I'm sure we'll talk about, which is the best conference in VR medicine globally. And also he's been instrumental in pushing out clinical trials, design trials, and actually showing the therapy with good outcomes in terms of papers and publications. So Brennan, the floor is yours. We're delighted to have you. Of course, looking forward to hearing what your vision is and what you're saying to us. Thank you so much, Brennan.
Thank you, Shafi, very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today to share our work at Cedars-Sinai and the work of others around the world, many of whom you've heard from in this conference regarding the science and practice of what I call immersive therapeutics. And I want to start with this picture, which is a picture of me with one of our patients at Cedars-Sinai. And this young woman has allowed her image to be shown, and she has pain and is at this moment contemplating whether or not to use a VR headset. Rather old VR headset, a Samsung Gear VR. This picture is taken several years ago because we've been using VR now for about 5 years at Cedars-Sinai in our hospital to help manage pain, anxiety, depression, and a number of other conditions that I will talk about today. Now over 3,000 patients have used VR in our medical system. So just to get us started, because this is a visual art, I will certainly share some data and show you some studies, but there's something emotional about seeing a photograph like this of this young man who has sickle cell anemia and is experiencing a pain crisis. But at this particular moment, he is in a helicopter flying over fjords in Iceland. And you can see the expression on his face and the emotional response that he's having. And if you were to speak with him, which I'll show you a video in a little bit, you would hear him say that he's not really experiencing pain at this moment. And what's really powerful is even after taking the headset off, he still does not have pain for some period of time. And the question is, you know, what's happening in his brain that allows him to become distracted from the pain even after the headset comes off of his face. This is another picture of another patient who I used VR with, and she has liver disease, has severe liver disease and cirrhosis. And at this moment, she's experiencing pain, but she's actually in Hawaii on a beach. And again, you can see the smile on her face, connoting an emotional response to this environment. And it's different than if I had just shown her a picture of a beach. At this moment, she feels as if she's actually on the beach, but she's sitting in a hospital room in a medical center. So, you know, we've been using these headsets, and these are two of the headsets that we use now, all-in-one headsets like the Oculus Go or the Pico G2 that are becoming increasingly inexpensive, high quality, and we're able to clean them, which is, of course, extremely important in healthcare, whether we're in a pandemic or otherwise, to allow us to recycle and use these headsets in clinical environments. So I have often told this story for many of you who may have heard my talks before, but I always like to start with this for those who maybe haven't heard me speak before. This is the very first time that I ever used virtual reality. And I was asked to put on a headset, and this was the first person view of my experience, and was going up the side of a 50-story building. And many of you who have used VR before have done this sort of ledge jumper experience, and it's profoundly impactful on, you know, consciousness. And as I was standing there, I realized that I was getting a little bit anxious standing on the side of a building and felt a little worried. And just as I was getting comfortable enough being up there and noticing these details, the programmers flipped that handrail right off, and it fell 50 stories to the ground and crashed, and I could hear it smash on the concrete down below. And then they asked me to jump off of this platform. And I said, no chance, I'm not going to do that. And they said, you know that you're standing in a conference room, right? Your feet are standing on carpet. But I said, my brain can't tell the difference. My brain thinks I'm going to die. But eventually I was able to get up enough courage to, take a baby step off the side of this building and then fall 50 stories all the way down to my virtual death. And that was the first time that I used virtual reality. And I always say when I tell the story that I recognize the power of VR to hijack the human mind. And that visceral sense of being physically present somewhere, we can use it for excitement or for fear, but maybe we can also use it for good, to promote positive cognitions that can support human health. So I like to tell that story because it is useful to frame how I was introduced to virtual reality. And it's the first time I died in virtual reality. And I will frequently tell, and I will again, the story of the second time that I died in virtual reality, which was at the University of Barcelona. And at the University of Barcelona, many of you know Professor Mel Slater, who does tremendous work using VR for a variety of conditions and scenarios. And I went to visit his laboratory, and they put me in this room, which is a rather nondescript room with black awnings. And I sat down on that chair and kicked my feet up on that coffee table. And his postdoc, Ramon Oliva, affixed sensors and vibration engines onto my wrists and my legs. And then they put a headset on my head. And next thing I know, that laboratory room turns into this rather beautiful living room with wood paneling and a chandelier and furniture. And I could see my feet on that coffee table. They then drew these blue lines on the coffee table and asked me to trace them out with my legs. And as I did, I noticed that my legs moved in perfect one-to-one synchrony with the legs that I was looking at. And I started to wonder, whose legs are these? They look like my legs and they move like my legs. So they must be my legs. But I knew that somewhere in that room, there was a computer running thousands of lines of code and convincing my brain that I had become this digital doppelganger that I was looking at. And what Professor Slater does next is he drops these balls from the ceiling. And as each ball strikes my body, I can physically feel it in the real world because there's a vibration engine that haptics that are activated the moment it synchronizes with that ball. And at this point, I had what Slater calls full body ownership. I felt like I truly became that avatar. And what happened next is so interesting and so remarkable. And I never get tired of telling this story of what he did to me next. And it's really hard to describe in words, so all I can do is show it to you and do my best to describe it. Next thing I knew, he had pulled my body apart. My observing eye was separated from the physical body that I had just occupied. And I started to float up to the ceiling. And as I did so, these balls followed me, and I continued to feel them, giving me this tactile feedback that I was still somehow alive. But when I looked down, I realized that that body was motionless. I was in motion, but that body was still. I had died and had a complete out-of-body experience. And this is so powerful because I realized that this technology, through digital sleight of hand, had violated something as essential as my physical coordinates in space and had split me apart in this ego-dissolving, strange, out-of-body virtual experience. And what's amazing about this experience is that it changed, in a way, my perceptions about dying. I don't want to die, but what I realized in this moment is the process of passing away need not be catastrophic, that it actually could be, in a way, a mystical experience or a spiritual experience. And Mel Slater has done this study entitled "A Virtual Out-of-Body Experience Reduces Fear of Death," where he exposed people to this out-of-body experience. And then he had a control condition where they maintained ownership over their body. And then he came back a week later and asked people about their fear of death. And he demonstrated objective and statistically significant reductions in fear of death in the group that underwent this out-of-body experience, which is fascinating. So I like to start with this because it emphasizes very powerfully, I think, that virtual reality is not just a platform for gaming and entertainment. It's a tool that modifies perception of the world around us and perception of the world within us. And if we use it to recalibrate unhealthy perceptions, then VR becomes potentially a radical new therapy to improve quality of life. So I like to tell this story as well, an example of that, where I frequently use this visualization. And if you listen, you can hear the sound of the music. And in a 360-degree view, we put our patients underwater with the help of the Dolphin Swim Club. And you can swim with these dolphins. And I had a patient who had very severe pain, and her pain was in her abdomen, and she really felt like she didn't know what was going on with her pain. And so we used this visualization to expose her to this and see if it could help her pain. We had already worked up the pain. We had done an upper endoscopy, a colonoscopy, a CT scan, all sorts of laboratory tests, and no one could figure out why she had this pain. But after 4 or 5 minutes in this experience, she said, I think I know why I have this pain. And she started to cry. And I said, really, what do you think it is? She said, it's because of my brother. And I thought, really, your brother? Tell me more. And she said, well, my brother had stomach cancer and he died. And I'm so fearful that I'm going to die too from stomach cancer. And I said, you know, we've looked in your stomach with a camera, with the endoscopy, and we did not see evidence of cancer. And she said, I know that. Everyone keeps telling me that, but I haven't been willing to accept it. And I think these dolphins are telling me I need to accept that this pain is from my brother and my fear of dying like he died. And she said, you know, a year on the couch and I never would have figured this out, but somehow these dolphins helped me do it. I thought, it's just remarkable what was going on in her brain. And she said her pain was all better, just like that. What was going on in her brain that the pain could be reduced so quickly and she can have such insights? Well, we know a little bit about this because Hunter Hoffman has been doing research on this for a long time at the University of Washington. And this is a study that he did very famously, where he took pictures of the brain with functional MRI scans. And on the left is a patient or a research subject who's experiencing pain. And on the right is that same research subject when they put a VR headset on and experience a game that they created called Snow World, where you can go through snowy landscapes and play a game. And you can look and notice that the signals on the left are like a little fire, like a conflagration. And then there's less signals on the right. But it's not just that there's fewer signals, it's the location of those signals. On the left, you notice that there's activity in the sensory cortex of the brain, but also in the middle where there is the emotional processing. This is the limbic system, the insular cortex. And here what we see is virtual reality reduces both the physical sensory part and the emotional part. And I really like to highlight this study because it points out that there are two components to pain. Buddha described the two components as the two arrows of pain. And he said the first arrow is when you get hit by the archer and it enters your body and it hurts, it's physically painful. But the second arrow is the self-inflicted wound, where you look at the first arrow and you think, I'm gonna die. You know, this is the existential anxiety that goes along with being in severe pain. And what VR seems to do is it seems to reduce both the physical pain and the emotional pain and cognitive pain. And this has been shown now in a variety of studies. These are two examples that are both very famous examples. In both cases, you have two sets of conditions, virtual reality or no virtual reality. In both cases, the lower bars are virtual reality and the higher bars are no virtual reality, with the exception of this one here, which says fun. What you're looking at on the left is a study at the University of Washington of patients with severe burn injuries who are undergoing dressing changes, which is one of the most painful experiences a human can endure. On the right is a study from the University of Michigan of women undergoing labor and delivery, undergoing childbirth. And in both cases, what you see is not only is the sensory experience of pain lower, the worst pain, sensory worst pain, but also the affective or emotional and cognitive components of pain, the time spent thinking about the pain or ruminating about the pain, the unpleasantness of the pain. So both of them go down, the physical or sensory, the cognitive, and the affective. And curiously, people undergoing burn dressing changes tend to have more fun undergoing a virtual reality burn dressing change. So this is evidence that VR can help both sensory and physical and the emotional components. We have recently published this study, which is another study using virtual reality in laboring women, a study that was run by Melissa Wong and Kim Gregory, where we looked at a form of Lamaze breathing in virtual reality, where women undergoing childbirth could breathe in and out, and the microphone in the headset detected their breathing, and they can breathe life into a tree, or they can transform a metaphorical, fantastical environment around them using their breath during childbirth. And we were able to show, on average, a drop in pain scores among those randomized to the virtual reality compared to the control condition where they did not receive virtual reality. So I work at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, and this is a picture of our hospital. Shafi has been kind enough to visit us and give a speech there a couple years ago. And the hospital is the largest hospital in the Western United States. We have almost 1,000 beds. And if you were to visit us and go into one of these rooms, you would see something like this. This is a photograph of one of our hospital rooms. And, you know, it's a nice room for a hospital, I suppose. But I'm showing you this picture because no one really wants to be in a room like this. Being in a room like this is a place of suffering, physical suffering, emotional suffering, social suffering, biopsychosocial illness. And it's not a place of healing. It's really not a place of rest. If you're lying in a bed like this is what you look at all day. You see a television screen, you see some things up on the ceiling, and every so often somebody like me shows up, maybe not smiling, asking people, 5 or 6 in the morning, how are you feeling? And then we disappear and we come back again. All day and night, this is what it's like. So the idea is, can we do better than that? Can we give people the opportunity to escape the 4 walls of the hospital room, to go to fantastical destinations or to swim underwater? This patient is reaching out as a blue whale crosses her visual field, except that she's experiencing pain in the hospital. We've been talking with our patients and learning more from them about what works and what doesn't work. Where do they want to travel? What is their experience interfacing with this technology? And some people, have preferences. They want to go, for example, to Hawaii or in an ice cave or on a safari in Africa. And others have very different experiences and needs with virtual reality. So we've been learning a lot and trying to study and publish our work so others can learn and we can learn from others. Here's an example of 2 of our patients using virtual reality. So I just want to show this to you briefly so you can get a sense of what it's like. So we'll see if it helps with the pain or not. Mm-hmm. You'll tell us.
Yes.
And we'll go from there. Okay, any questions about that?
Pull that down over your eyes now.
Should load up.
Whoa.
What do you see?
Horses?
Yep, okay. And over the bridge. Is that working?
Yes.
What's happening now?
The helicopter, waterfalls.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to Iceland?
No.
With the music and everything, it's real peaceful. Oh, it's people. Hey. That's cool.
So what'd you think?
It's pretty relaxing.
Uh-huh.
Especially with the music and everything, and then the different scenery. Like, it was just one part where it was like a waterfall. You're sitting in a cave,
Right.
And it's a waterfall right next to you. Almost made me forget I was here. Cause you're there.
Right.
It's like you're really there. You're hearing the waterfall and everything is like you look around and it's the whole scenery.
Right.
It's like you're immersed in it.
How did it make you feel?
Relaxed. Very relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't thinking about the pain.
You weren't?
No, I wasn't.
Really?
I was just thinking about being there
Uh-huh.
and having a good time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We'll let Dr. Herman know.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
But,
you.
Good. Okay.
Yes, but I really did like it. I enjoyed it really much.
Excellent.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
taking me.
So it's one thing for me to show you data, which I will in a moment, but it's another to show the patients themselves experiencing virtual reality. And we started seeing these stories and thinking we need to study this and learn more about what's happening with these patients. We'll let Dr. Herman. So we did some research, and this is an example of one of our studies where we enrolled people in the hospital, like those two patients who were experiencing pain. And we randomized them to two different conditions while they were in the hospital. One group of patients had access to a virtual reality library where they can experience fantastical worlds like this one, for example, from Trip VR, where they can go through different environments that are distracting and entrain cognitive flow. And we had a library of many other experiences that they could use while they were in the hospital. The other group watched a health and wellness channel on the television in their room as a control condition. And when we compared the VR versus the television, we saw that people over time in the hospital had a greater reduction in their reported pain scores to the nursing staff if they were in the VR group. What you're looking at here on the left is the data for all patients, where you had a greater drop with VR. But when we looked at those with the most severe pain, scores of 8, 9, or 10, we saw an even larger benefit in favor of virtual reality. And these tend to be the patients that have not only physical pain, but emotional pain that goes along with it, suggesting that VR really can benefit the most in that type of pain. These are some more highlights of some of the visualizations that people can see when they're using the virtual reality headsets that we've been using. I want to just share a couple other examples and I'm going to wrap up. This is an example which I think is a very powerful use of virtual reality, using it as self-compassion within virtual reality for people who have depression. I've been talking about pain mostly so far, but also depression can be helped. And what you're looking at here are 4 pictures from this study from Chris Bruin and Caroline Falconer in the United Kingdom, where what they do here is a research subject is placed in a virtual reality headset with sensors. And they look across a room, and on this stool here, all of a sudden, there's a little child, a little girl who's crying. And the patient needs to calm that child down by showing compassion and working with the child to relax and feel better. And after that, the research subject actually becomes the little girl, occupies her body, just like I did at the beginning of this talk, and then looks back and they see an avatar of themselves. And they listen as they calm themselves down. It's pretty incredible where you have this body swapping. And then, again, this is with Mel Slater. And then what they found is a month later, the people who went through this body swapping paradigm had lower depression scores, suggesting that we have this ability to be compassionate with ourselves. And VR has an ability to give us access to that self-compassionate state. I think it's a very powerful example. So there's many, many other examples we could talk about, and we unfortunately would have to be here all day to do it, so I won't be able to talk about everything. But this is an example of just some of the other conditions that virtual reality is being used for. If you're interested in learning more about our program at Cedars-Sinai, including our webinar series and what used to be in-person events, you can visit our website, virtualmedicine.org or virtualmedicine.health. We have a library of videos of many of the speakers from today and others who have given talks. And finally, I've also written a book about all of this. This book was just released a couple weeks ago. The book is called VRX, How Virtual Therapeutics Will Revolutionize Medicine. And in this book, I tell the stories that I've shared with you today, but I also ask questions about what does VR teach us about mind-body medicine? What does it teach us about our own consciousness? And how can we learn from other fields like neuropsychology and philosophy of mind, and combine that with health technology like virtual reality to nudge the brain into more positive states of mind in partnership with traditional medical therapeutics. And that's what this book is about. And if you're interested in learning more, you can find this wherever books are sold, on Amazon or otherwise. So with that, because I come from Hollywood, California, I'm going to end with a movie scroll of all the different people who have helped to participate in the research that we do at Cedars-Sinai, including all of our collaborators and students and trainees. And if you're interested, I'm on Twitter and frequently post about medical virtual reality, and my handle is there. And also we have a Twitter handle for our virtual reality program at Cedars-Sinai, virtual medical conference, or MedConf, which is available there as well. And thank you, Shafi, for the opportunity to be with you today, and happy to answer a few questions if we have time for that.
Yeah, thanks, Brennan. As always, amazing to hear the updates, what you've done. Brennan, can you do me a favor very quickly? Can you just make me the host of this session? I think you've become the host. If you go to the right scroll on participants on the video icon, it should bring up to make me host. That'd be great. Then I can share my video. Perfect, that's better. Great, so there's a couple of questions that have come up. One of them is around, which I think is a really good one, is around reimbursement. Obviously, the VR therapy is in, you've shown the benefits, etc., across a wide range of diseases. How we do with reimbursement and tariff for something that is, therapy that's not medicines or tablets or whatever? Can you give us an idea about where we are with that, Brennan?
Yeah, this is really the last frontier, I think, to getting this into clinical practice. We don't necessarily need more science at this point. We need mundane things like people paying for it, like staffing, like cleaning equipment, process of care, these sorts of things. So that's how I think about this question is, yes, that's a work in progress. It's pretty incredible that the FDA has now recognized this field and calls it medical extended reality, or MXR. And that's a major advance in terms of getting the attention of payers and insurance companies. In addition, the FDA has designated VR as a breakthrough technology for managing pain. And that was an official designation as of just a couple weeks ago. And that's another step to get the attention of insurance companies. Insurance companies are actively investigating the use of virtual reality. We've actually, our group has been funded by Travelers Insurance. Applied VR out of Los Angeles is doing work with Blue Cross Blue Shield in the United States. And the hope is that they will begin to see that this is likely an effective and cost-effective approach. Unfortunately, as of right now, most insurance companies are not reimbursing the use of this tool. Still, clinicians will use virtual reality within their practice. And so, for example, for phobia therapy, using virtual exposure therapy, and they'll use it as part of their practice and get reimbursed for the service, but it's not a VR specific reimbursement. So that still needs to be addressed.
That's really interesting. Obviously, we'll wait to see what happens with the FDA and your work as we go forward and see if that transpires as some kind of transaction at some point. The other question was around over the last 8 to 9 months with the pandemic. Are there any use cases during the pandemic, Brennan, that you've come across or potentially that could come across that we use VR for? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the pandemic, we now are seeing worldwide a second pandemic of mental health and concerns and distress, suicidality, exacerbation of chronic conditions like pain, a lack of access to care. So you think about people who are quarantined, who don't have easy access to healthcare services, particularly mental health services. Here, there's a role for virtual reality, and we are actually doing this right now, sending virtual reality headsets to patients' homes with instructions where we send them a cognitive behavioral therapy program with 56 modules, where they can have an 8-week treatment course at home without needing a clinician, without needing telemedicine visits, where you still need, with telemedicine, to have a human on the other line who may or may not be available. And that's the idea of using VR as a remote treatment paradigm. And then you think about people in rural communities, particularly in the United States, where there's a huge disparity in access to healthcare services. We just put in a grant to use VR in rural communities in the post-COVID era. So these are just a few thoughts.
Yeah, what about social VR? We've all been stuck at home. We've not been able to travel outside our house. Do you think social VR could be coming in? Is it possible? Does it have a use case here, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, social VR is very exciting. My only caveat is, having used social VR myself, I tend to get a little motion sick in it. It's still a little bit, I don't know, it's still a little bit choppy sometimes, but I don't want to undermine the platform, because I know a lot of people are really excited about social VR. And I think if we can just get it as smooth as possible with a high frame rate, and think about the best use cases for how to interact with other people, there's a lot of really exciting opportunities for social VR, but it's not an area that I know as much about, so I wouldn't want to speculate too much.
Sure. Okay, so I think we get to the end of our session, Brennan. Congratulations to LA Dodgers. I know that you're a great fan. First time in 32 years, I think they've won the competition, so congrats. And if you actually go to Google, put LA Dodgers into search, you get all these fireworks appearing. Have you seen that, Brennan?
Yes, we have been surrounded by fireworks. I actually was a 16-year-old boy when the Dodgers played last, and I was at the stadium for the World Series. And I now have a 16-year-old daughter. So that's how long it's been since they won last.
Wonderful.
I'm a lifetime Dodger fan. So
Wonderful.
We celebrated, and yes, there were fireworks all around my neighborhood.
Congratulations, and thanks so much, Brennan, for joining us. And I'll catch up with you soon at some stage. 2 things: you must buy Brennan's book. It's amazing. It's got amazing, I think, reputation, etc. So please go and buy it on Amazon, wherever it's available. And secondly, if you get a chance, the Virtual Medicine Conference is run once a year. You must attend, either virtual or in person, if we get to the stage or face-to-face. Thank you, Brennan.